Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Rasmussen, Chapter 9, Knowledge, second portion, second recording of the knowledge chapter. And in this talk, we're going to continue onward with knowledge and how it is organized within the brain. This is going to be part one of two parts. The second part is going to cover some more of the neuroscience behind knowledge, but this is going to talk about some of the conceptualization about how knowledge is stored and organized, rather, within the brain. We're not talking about neurons here. You're going to want to think that each component that we show you here is going to be a neuron and a connection, but it's not. It's rather multiple neurons are going to make up this whole network, okay? It's not just one neuron connecting to another neuron. It's just kind of how your brain organizes it, metaphorically. Okay, so we're going to cover three different models: the semantic network model, the spreading activation model, and the connectionist model. We're going to spend the majority of time talking about the semantic network model, then a little bit of time spreading activation, and then a little bit of time the connectionist. All right, so let's get going. We'll get going with the just a little bit of an overview before we get into the semantic network model. So, how is information organized within the brain? Well, researchers believe that to some extent rather, there may be a hierarchies created within the brain in respect to the knowledge that you have, the memories that you have. This would be semantic knowledge, memories for rules and facts. So I have a picture of The Godfather here. The Godfather, obviously, pretty solid movie, especially the first one. Some people like, two or three. A lot of people like two, I believe. Not the biggest fan of any of them, actually. They weren't ever my favorite. I was more of like a Goodfellas guy. But anyhow, let's continue onward here. You got The Godfather. You know about The Godfather. Godfather is in the Mafia. And you know how, in respect to the Mafia, there is a whole set of, a hierarchy in respect to who's the boss, who are the people underneath the boss, so on and so forth, all the way down to, the lowest ranking individual of the gang, of the group, of the mafia. So a hierarchy, a good way to portray what a hierarchy is. So here is what a hierarchy can look like. So if you're looking at furniture, from furniture you have chair, table, and bed, and probably others. But from a chair you have a kitchen chair, a dining room chair. From a table you got a kitchen table, a dining room table, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those three levels are specified in respect to the global. That would be the subordinate. Subordinate would be the overarching level at which an object would exist. Then what you have is you have the basic level where it's underneath the global level, and then you have the specific. That's the subordinate level underneath the basic level. So global, basic, specific. All right. So basically, let's take a look at some of the evidence for information is organized in this type of hierarchy. So individuals are quicker to recognize objects when looking for basic category level. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. So if I gave you these objects right here, if I asked you to look at this and you see a car, and then you have to determine if the next object is a car, okay, and the latency is defined as how much time it takes you to complete an activity. If I say vehicle and then I show you a car, it's actually going to be faster when you see the word car and then you see a car than when you see the word vehicle than when you see a car. What? Seriously? Are you joking me? Isn't that so strange? So yeah, this is what research has found, is that when you see the word car and you see a car, you're faster than when you see a vehicle and then the word vehicle then car. So why is this happening? Well, if we go back to this right here, we can see that vehicle would probably be at the global level versus cars at the basic level, and then therefore the specific would be, that object, that item. I'm not even sure if it would be an item. I mean, it could be an item, it could be a specific. It might even be at the basic level. But basically, no, not trying to use the same word here, but essentially, when you see that car, all you have to do is go up to the basic level as opposed to the basic up to the global level. We'll take a look at that in just a little bit, and then it potentially explains what's going on here. So, here's another piece of evidence, okay? So, as quickly as possible, name the following objects. Okay, so what did you say? Most people say shark, bike, or bicycle, and then car. Okay, so researchers have found also that it seems as though individuals oftentimes name objects at the basic level, at the basic category level. Most people don't get into the specifics, and most people don't get into the superordinate. Sorry, excuse me. I think I swallowed a bug or something like that. Talking about bugs, I guess, and insects. Here is not an insect, but it's a snake. What type of snake would you label that? Well, most people would just be like, oh, that's a snake, okay? Some people might actually say, oh, that's a coral snake. Well, you'd be wrong. That is actually a king snake, okay? So if I'm right here, if you go red to black, venom lac, that's a king snake. So the red to the black, little lines. Venom lac, red to yellow. Some snakes have yellow lines and then black. Red to yellow, kill a fellow. Those are the coral snakes. Very, very dangerous. And so, well, who we have over here is you may know who this individual is, you may not, but this is Jack Hanna. Jack Hanna is a zoologist from, or at least resides in, I believe, Cleveland, or Columbus, rather, I believe, and he's a zoologist, and he's a big proponent for the zoo, and basically helped their zoo out tremendously and gained a lot of notoriety in respect to the work that he did with animals and the education that he did with animals. So very, very knowledgeable about organisms. And what researchers have found is that when you ask an expert about a name for an object, oftentimes the experts will go to the specific name. Okay, they will not go to the basic name like most individuals, like myself. Okay, let's actually check this out. Now, if you're looking at the experts versus the non-experts, experts are going to be in blue, non-experts are going to be in orange. Okay, this will be apparent in a second. Sparrow, robin, bird. Just hold on. On the x-axis, you have categories used to name the pictures of the birds. So they're going to show these people pictures of birds, and they're going to see if these people name them in a basic or a specific way. Basic versus specific way. I think the blue is going to pop up over here. The orange is going to pop up over here. We'll see about that. In respect to the percentage of responses, this will be the percentage of basic, percentage of specific, so on and so forth. And so what these researchers found is exactly a switch here. So the experts answer name the objects in a very specific way, versus these objects that they see, the non-experts name these objects in respect to a basic way. Now that makes sense. Maybe they don't have non-experts don't have the knowledge, or maybe they don't feel comfortable using the knowledge. Whereas the experts, they do have the knowledge, they feel comfortable with it, and that's that. Or it really could be all people have the knowledge of it, but it's just that experts like to maybe show off their knowledge, or that's actually what is being activated. And that's kind of this, the thought here is that this is what is being activated within their brain. Oh, that's a robin, whereas this person, oh, it's just a bird. Okay, so kind of interesting thing is how do experts versus non-experts think? Do they actually think differently? And maybe they do. This is not a perfect study at all, and it doesn't say that they think differently, but it's getting at the point that they may think differently. All right, so the whole thing that we're talking about here, this is the semantic network model. So all this information kind of started to be put together and started to create what is known as the semantic network model. So the semantic network model is something that was proposed by Collins and Quinlan in the 1960s, and it's hierarchy driven. Okay, so it has a hierarchy, just as we talked about before. Each lower level is more detailed than the above, so just what we talked about before. But when I show you this in just a second, don't think about each node, and each node is where there's a dot, and then there's lines connecting to it. So the node is where a dot connects with lines. That's not a neuron, okay? This is not neurons. Remember, this is not neurons. It's just a type of a model where connections are being created. So it's a hierarchy, so it starts in the upper, it starts in some higher fashion, and then it goes downwards. So living things, there's also, so this would be a node, and there's also connections coming off of it where it says can, and then some sort of a little more specific, it's a trait, okay, can grow. Living thing is living, okay? Now the ISA, that's just is a. So a living thing is a plant. Living thing is a animal. So plant has roots, can move, has skin, so on and so forth. Now you're getting down to the further, more basic levels, the more specific levels, and you're getting a tree, flower, bird, fish, so on and so forth. Okay, and then you see that the flower has leaves, it has petals, so on and so forth. And now you're down to the specific where your tree is a pine. Okay, and the pine is green typically. Okay, an oak has leaves. Okay, whereas a pine tree really, I mean, it has leaves, but it's specialized leaves. They're more along the lines of needles. That's what they are. Okay, so basically, this is the semantic network model in a nutshell. Okay, this is how it would be conceptualized for living things. Now, if you want to look at this some more, you can take a pause. Try to encode this information. But I'm going to ask a question here. Okay, so if I ask you a question, is a rose a living thing? Okay, if a rose is a living thing, how long is that going to take you to answer that question? Well, according to the semantic network model, you have to start from a rose, and you have to go up to a flower, you have to go up to a plant, and then you have to go up to a living thing. Okay. However, if I ask you the question, is a salmon a fish? You start at salmon, okay? So salmon, and then you just go straight up to a fish, okay, to the node of a fish. So you got 3 versus 1. 3 nodes you have to travel up, 1, 2, 3 to arrive at the answer, and then just 1 node up to arrive at the answer. So what should researchers find? Should researchers find that people answer quicker if they are given a rose as a living thing than if is a salmon a fish? Well, no. Researchers should find that a salmon is a fish is answered quicker according to the semantic network model. So let's take a look and see what researchers have done. So here's just an example. So researchers asked if a canary was an animal versus a canary is a bird. And so what you see is, in respect to the data, you see that researchers overall are going to compare on the x and the y-axis. On the x-axis, you have the levels to be traversed. Okay, so 0 levels. So is a canary a canary? Excuse me. Excuse me. Is a canary a bird, or is a canary an animal? All right. And so what you find is, in respect to both property, so the property, where the property would actually connect, or where the category is what we're talking about mainly. On the y-axis, you have mean response time, so that would be the latency, so how much time it takes them to respond to this question. And what you see is the exact same data overall. A canary is a canary. Okay, that's really quick. A canary is a bird, a little bit slower, and then a canary is an animal. It is a little bit slower. Now, we're not talking a major difference. I mean, we're only talking like 1,100 and maybe 90 milliseconds versus 1,200 and maybe 1,200 and I don't know what that'd be, maybe 25. So it's really not a major difference between these two, okay, going up 1 node to a second node, especially with 1 and 2. But thinking about it, it shouldn't be that large because these nodes are probably pretty close by. But there is evidence that it is a significant difference between going from 1 node to 2 nodes, and this indicates that the difference between the means was not likely caused just by chance. It was likely caused because possibly there is a difference in how we store information in respect to we have to go up 2 nodes, and that takes longer than just going up 1 node to answer the question. Now, if you look at property, property is actually the same exact thing. It takes a little bit longer to think about a property, and that would make sense as well, because you have to go up to the node, and then you have to go branch off of the node as well. So, it's kind of interesting that you see a very nice piece of data from Collin and Quinlan in respect to the semantic network model. So basically, just thinking about it, after a node has been activated, activation does spread to surrounding areas. This is another note that the researchers said. So if you access robin and you go up to bird, well, animal, canary, and ostrich are also activated. Now, in this, I was going to ask you about it, but it's already here. The activation is the actual. I want to make this clear. So this is actual activation, but these are also starting to become activated, all right? The spreading activation. Now, the thing that you need to think about is this is all being primed. All this information is likely being primed. So this is a nice way to account for priming in respect to if you're given the word robin, you're likely going to prime bird. But if you have to think about robin and a bird, well, once you start thinking about bird, well, then your animal, ostrich, canary are also going to get primed, meaning that if you're then later on asked if the word animal is a word, you're going to be like, oh yeah, definitely animal's a word. Or an ostrich is a word. Yeah, you're going to be quicker to answer that because those words have already been primed. They've already had a little bit of activation going to that area within the brain, wherever that might exist. So this is a nice way to account for priming. So what you should be doing is, I don't say this much, but you should be, I think this is the first time I've actually referenced a cog lab in one of these PowerPoints, but you should do the lexical decision task. The lexical decision task maps on to some of the things that we were just talking about in that last slide. So make sure you do that, and that'll apply to the semantic network model. Okay, so the semantic network model is good. However, it's not perfect. There's definitely some problems here. Okay, so here's a point that researchers have noted. Why do people answer faster to a canary is a bird than an ostrich is a bird? Okay, so if I say a canary is a bird, but also an ostrich is a bird, you're going to answer quicker to a canary is a bird than an ostrich. Why is that? They're just one note away. Everything, an ostrich, a canary, a turkey, an owl, a hawk, all those things are essentially connected to the bird, but some are answered quicker than others. The semantic network model doesn't really apply or explain how that is. Maybe no cognitive economy. We may talk about this in class. Let's just bypass this. Also, why do people answer quicker to a pig is a mammal? All right. Actually, they answer quicker to a pig is an animal than a pig is a mammal. This is kind of interesting, right? So when you look at pig, they should answer quicker to a mammal than when a pig is an animal. So if your semantic network is stored this way, an animal, bird, fish, mammal, then you should answer quicker to mammal than an animal. But why is that? According to the semantic network model, it would not suggest that. So something might be going on here that the semantic network model is not accounting for, or the semantic network model is possibly wrong. So here is an alternative proposed by Collins and Loftus, 1975. This is called the spreading activation model. The spreading activation model really is kind of what it sounds like. Activate one location, and then that activation spreads to other nearby nodes. So it's not really a hierarchy, as you can see. It's an arrangement of items that are based on how well, the proximity to one another is based on how well do those, items kind of correlate together. So it's not a hierarchy. Okay, you're not working from top to bottom. It's really just a two-dimensional thing placed on, a two-dimensional surface that's parallel to the ground. Okay, think about it that way. It really doesn't mean anything if you're on high, low, doesn't matter. The associated info is more connected. So say red, red is connected to fire, it's connected to fire engine, it's connected to orange, yellow, green, and all of these other things right there. So red's connected to a lot of stuff. However, you look at the word like house, here, it's only connected to fire engine and fire. It's not connected to pears, apples, cherries, okay? So associated information is connected. Longer lines actually indicate a more distal association. So if you look at red and sunrise, that's more distal than red and fire, meaning that if you need to think about the word red, you're going to probably think about fire quicker than you think about sunrises, okay? Because it's a further line, and that means more distal connection, and it may not be as easily to access that connection, that pairing, red and sunrises, as it would be red and fire. This explanation does seem to account for all the problems that have been portrayed in the or found in the semantic network model. So, kind of nice. All right. So just a difference in length rather than finding support for the hierarchical model. Okay. So a big thing here is in respect to fire engine. One thing that can account for some of this is in respect to different people, say Randy versus Sandra. Randy may have all the similar connections to fire engine. It's just Randy's link to fire engine from vehicle is longer than Sandra's link from vehicle to fire engine. And so it's not so much different hierarchies, but people can definitely have different hierarchies. But it's also the length that an individual has between connections that also seems to be important. All right, so here's an alternative view as well. This is by McClelland and Rummelhart in 1986. This one's definitely a little bit more difficult to comprehend than the prior two. This is called the connectionist model, or what I like to refer to as the parallel distributed processing model. This essentially states that connections can represent neurons. Okay, this can actually start to represent neurons. Does it represent neurons per se? Well, probably not, but it can represent potentially groups of neurons. Associations can be stronger based on the strength between two neurons, okay, between one node and another node. They may actually have more receptor sites, larger amount of dendritic spines, and basically, therefore, the connection is stronger, and it's going to be easier to be activated than another connection that doesn't necessarily have as strong of a connection, obviously. So, not located on the model are the connection weights. So I'm going to show you the model in just a second. It's not talking about how strongly these connections are. Researchers have posited ideas, but I'm not going to show you how strong these connections are. But here's a conceptualization of their parallel distributed processing. So let's pretend we start out with the concept of canary. So from canary, you want to get to the specifics, okay, of what it can do. So a canary can. So if you activate the concept canary and you activate the concept of relation, what this is going to do is going to connect to some hidden units. You can think of these as hidden units. Even the representation, the hidden, it's not going to be the end result. The hidden and the representation is not the end result. It's just like a pattern of activity that is going to transpire from a canary downward to various neurons where you have a relation. The relation is going to help start keying it in. So I guess canary goes to this one. Oh gosh, where does it go? And then this guy goes over here, and then this guy goes like over this way somewhere, and then well, funny thing is can goes here and here. But let's pretend that they match on. And if they match on, what's going to happen is they're going to go to grow, they're going to go to move, and they're going to go to fly, and they're going to go to sing. But they don't go to swim, and they don't go up here because you're not even looking at is or is-a or has. You're just looking at what can canaries do? Ooh, that's a tongue twister. Can canaries. Canary can. I don't know what else I would put after that. But anyhow, you get the point. The canary can grow, move, fly, and sing. So this is the parallel distributed processing, and that you start with some sort of concept within your head. This would be more along the lines of the input, and here would be the output in respect to what the object is actually going to be thought of. Or thought about as, or is, or can, so on and so forth. Okay? So that's the parallel distributed processing, the connectionist model. I hope that has been helpful in respect to the semantic network model, the spreading activation, and the one that we just talked about. This is essentially a few main players in respect to how the brain organizes, or rather, I guess you'd say how the mind organizes concepts. In the next hierarchies, part 2 of 2, we're going to go over some of the neuroscience behind how these models might actually wind up within an individual's brain, or how the brain actually really stores these to some extent. All right, so make sure you tune into the next one, but thanks for listening to this.